Chapter 7 of the Alps, the Danube, and the Near East. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Betty B. Over the plains of Lombardy to Milan. Today I've been riding over the Lombardy plain from Venice to Milan. To the north, I could see the low foothills of the Alps gradually rising till they met the sky, and to the south, the fertile fields going on and on to the horizon. The whole country is a garden where the luxuriant crops stand out against a background of reddish-brown soil. In the Middle Ages, the wool industry of this region was important. Now silk has taken the place of wool, and there are great groves of mulberry trees with other crops growing between the rows. When the Austrian troops held this district, so much money was made from silk culture that it was said the soldiers and the officers lived on mulberry leaves. No wonder the sight of these rich plains put heart into the cohorts of Hannibal, when, exhausted by their march over the Alps, they looked down upon them and thought of the loot they might yield. No wonder that, nearly 2,000 years later, Napoleon's men were inspired by the fruitfulness of the fields to sweep down from the mountain passes upon the Austrian forces. The Po, the largest river in Italy, flows along most of the southern boundary of Lombardy, while part of its western border is formed by the Ticino, one of the chief tributaries of the Po. In the plain are most of the beautiful Italian lakes. The climate is hot in summer, but in winter, bitterly cold winds bear down upon it from the mountains. The farmers offset the scanty rainfall of the summers by a system of irrigation works begun in the Middle Ages, and still so serviceable that it is almost impossible for the crops to fail for lack of water. The scenes here are different from those of other parts of Europe. There are more buildings in the midst of the fields, and more of the people live out on the farms instead of in villages. The cottages are usually of brick covered with stucco. It is said that 6 out of every 10 of the people in Italy are on the land, and that only about 10% of her nearly 111,000 square miles of area is useless or uncultivated. This 1/10 is barren rock. It is true that there is much mountainous country that can never be put to the plow, but grapes and olives grow on stony slopes, and chestnuts, which are an important food of the people, flourish on the mountainsides. The land is intensively cultivated, so that I seem to be rolling through a succession of truck patches. Mixed farming appears to be the rule. It is a tradition of the Italian farmer that his bread shall be made of his own wheat, his salad mixed with his own olive oil, and his wine pressed from the grapes out of his own vineyard. Corn and rice grow side by side with the vineyards, and mulberry trees compete for their share of the sustenance. From maize, called by the Italian farmer Turkish corn, the people make polenta, which is almost as popular with them as macaroni. Now and then I saw kilns for drying out the corn. These were installed when it was thought that pellagra, the scourge of the Italian peasants, was due to eating damp, musty corn. The old method of hanging the corn outside the house in the sun still prevails, however, and in autumn the garlands of golden grain add to the picturesqueness of the landscape. The worst cases of pellagra are now taken to hospitals for special diet and nursing. A victim of the disease who is allowed to remain at home is supplied with salt free of charge. Salt is a government monopoly in Italy, and its price often puts it beyond the reach of the poorest peasants. It is against the law even to take home a bucket of seawater to get the salt from. As in other parts of Italy, many of the farms of Lombardy are rented. There are several rental systems, but perhaps the best is that known as mezzeria, under which the tenant gets half the crop. A house, a shed for his cattle, and a vat for winemaking are furnished him, and he also has the right to a certain number of the eggs from his hens. The landlord pays for all improvements and supplies half the oxen. In the case of a bad harvest, the landlord must provide seed grain for the next planting. The rented farm is generally small, ranging from 10 to 25 acres. The government agricultural experts estimate that there should be a man to every 2.5 acres. Much of the irrigated area belongs to big landowners, syndicates, or development companies. One class of laborers on such estates lives on the land rent-free, drawing wages partly in cash and partly in kind. The members of the other class hire out for the best wages they can get and maintain themselves in mean little villages. Everywhere the vineyards are carefully tended, more so now, as a matter of fact, than ever before, for the government is trying to uproot the old, haphazard methods of the past. Eternal vigilance is the price of wine in Italy, especially in the hill country. Here the wind is a great foe, rushing down in September, rubbing the bunches of grapes together and knocking off or bruising the fruit so that it does not come to the right maturity and sweetness. The peasants have a saying that the wind has drunk a great deal of wine. Another enemy of the grapes and of other crops as well is hail. In many districts, the people shoot into the hail-laden clouds in the hope of breaking them up before their downpour can destroy the crops. In some places, at the time of the grape harvest approaches, the leaves are stripped from the vines so that the sun may shine full on the fruit, but in others they are left on so as to protect it from hail. As the grapes ripen, the vineyard owner, his wife, and his children mount guard night and day against thieves. When the vintage begins, ox carts carrying big tubs are driven among the vines to gather up the grapes picked into baskets by the harvesters. It is considered a sign of a good harvest if swarms of earwigs troop out of the tubs when they are taken from where they have been stored since the previous season. The fruit is pressed in the vats in the wine cellars, and while machinery is being used more and more for this work, many maintain that the old way is the best. These winemakers claim that the mechanical presses squeeze the stems and seeds, whereas the elastic tread of the human foot is exactly what is needed to get only the best from the grape. Some of Italy's wine is still trodden out by the feet of girls and boys in just the same process that Horace celebrates in his odes. Wooden shoes fitted with spikes in the soles are worn for this purpose. In the last half-century, Italy has undergone an agricultural revolution. It used to be that agriculture was considered no proper pursuit for the well-born and well-educated. A father of the upper classes wished to see his son a graduate of a university with the title of doctor in this or that branch of learning. Then somebody hit on the happy thought of granting the title of doctor to those completing a course of study in a high school of agriculture, and soon the attitude toward scientific farming as a profession underwent a change. Italy now has a number of agricultural colleges and special schools for teaching oil and cheese making, fruit culture, and cattle breeding. Scattered throughout the country are experimental farms, and in some districts the government lends agricultural machinery to the farmers for 2 weeks at a time. Rural credit associations and village banks have been organized to make loans to the small farmers. There are also cooperative banks that accept deposits of the smallest sums and lend money on simple notes of hand endorsed by 1 or 2 signatures. Italy is also the home of the International Institute of Agriculture, founded at Rome to carry out the idea of an American, David Lubin. This unique organization gathers crop reports from all over the world and collects information about farm labor and other matters relating to agriculture. 52 nations support the institute. Italy has doubled her farm production in the past 50 years. She grows more wheat than anything else, and after that come corn and rice. She ranks next to France as a wine producer, making more than 1 million gallons a year. A glance at a physical map of the country will show you that most of the level land is in Lombardy plain. At the top of the Italian boot are the Alps, while down the leg runs the long, low range of the Apennines. The Alps formerly cut off Italy from the rest of Europe, but this barrier has been overcome by the railroads. In the trough between the 2 mountain systems lies Lombardy, which has been built up by earth washings brought down by the streams. Within the last 6 centuries, the delta of the Po has added to the land surface an area equal to 800 farms of a quarter section each, and the ancient port of Adria, which gave its name to the Adriatic, is now 15 miles inland. Though Italy is in the same latitude as Indiana, its climate is more like that of Florida, for the peninsula gets warm breezes from Africa and the Mediterranean. In the southern part and in Sicily, lemons, oranges, figs, and other subtropical fruits grow as well as in Southern California. The country has little valuable iron ore and practically no good coal, so that she must import fuel for her factories. But development of her abundant water power, which is being vigorously pushed, will eventually make her independent of foreign coal. It is estimated that Italy has in her rivers and streams a total of 12 million horsepower. If this were all developed, it would mean the equivalent of 60 million tons of coal in a year. Like Switzerland, she has a great program for the electrification of 4,000 miles, or nearly half of her railroads, most of which are operated by the government. Her dependence on foreign raw materials is one of Italy's great problems. She must bring in, besides coal, nearly half her food, as well as the cotton and the wool needed by her factories. The truth is, the country has a great many mouths to feed in proportion to its size. If the United States were as thickly populated, we should have 1,000 million people, or nearly 10 times as many as we have now. In an area about equal to that of New Mexico, Italy is supporting a population of more than 38 millions, or 340 to the square mile. Overpopulation has caused much poverty, especially in the southern part of the country, and has led to extensive emigration. The fact that the United States, which used to admit a large percentage of Italian immigrants, now restricts their numbers, is a hardship for this country. Not only did the departure of the immigrants mean fewer stomachs to be filled, but the money they returned to their native land was an important part of the national income. While Lombardy has more than 540 people to the square mile, it is agriculturally and commercially the most prosperous section of the country. Again and again, especially as we neared Milan, I was impressed with the flourishing industrial life of the region. We passed the linen mills, woolen mills, silk mills, and machine shops, and finally drove into Milan, Italy's chief railway center and silk market, and one of the 3 big industrial cities of the country. Genoa, the principal seaport and a rival of Marseille, is one of Milan's commercial competitors, and Turin, where the Fiat cars are made in the largest automobile factory of Europe, is the other. After the quiet and dreaminess of Venice, Milan seems to have the atmosphere of a Pittsburgh or a Chicago. Indeed, it is the most modern city in Italy and looks in some respects like an American town. In shape, it is a polygon, and its center is the fine Piazza del Duomo, from which many broad streets radiate in all directions. These streets are connected by an inner circle of boulevards constructed just outside a canal. This canal marks the site of the moat of the medieval city, for despite her up-to-date appearance, Milan is very old. Some of the streets are wide, it is true, but others are so narrow that motor cars have to drive carefully in passing. Prominent features of the business section are the arcades here and there. The principal one is that of Victor Emmanuel in the heart of the city and within a stone's throw of the cathedral. This great arcade, which is about 100 feet high and nearly as wide, is beautifully decorated. Its ceiling is of glass, which at night is brilliantly lighted by electricity. The floors are in mosaic. The arcade is lined with fine stores, the big display windows looking out on the passages. Like the Piazza San Marco in Venice, it is the great meeting, promenade, and dining place of the city. All day long it is alive with shoppers, and in the evening is filled with the world of Milan and his wife. Beautiful women and girls and handsome, bareheaded men walk back and forth until 12 o'clock at night. The biggest and best thing in Milan is the cathedral, which occupies one end of the Piazza del Duomo. It dates back to 1386 and is built of brick cased in white marble. The stone is sadly smoke-stained since the city has become a manufacturing center, but the whole is still most beautiful. The buttresses and roof are adorned with 135 pinnacles, and 2,300 marble statues decorate the exterior. It is covered with carvings in high and low relief, representing scenes from the scriptures, almost every one of them a work of fine art. The interior is wonderfully impressive. The building is in the form of a cross. The huge columns of pink marble upholding the mighty roof are of indescribable beauty and slenderness, and I defy any man, no matter what his religion, to go through this cathedral unmoved. 40,000 people may gather here at one time and unite in the worship of God, who gave to man the mind to conceive and the power to execute such a masterpiece. Besides being enriched with noble buildings and artistic masterpieces handed down from the past, Milan has vast wealth gained from her industries and her part in the productive enterprises of northern Italy. The city is the chief financial center of Italy. Its bankers and commercial magnates do business with all the world. Genoa, Italy's principal port, is less than 100 miles distant, and it is the mouth through which the factories and the mills are fed with the raw materials from abroad. It has direct steamship service to all Mediterranean ports, to England, New York, Asia, and Australia. Here are landed coal from Great Britain, cotton from the United States, cottonseed oil for mixing with the native oil, and iron, petroleum, and other products. Although Genoa's exports are large, they are usually far exceeded in value by her imports. Since the completion of the St. Gothard Tunnel through the Alps, this port has become also an outlet for the manufactured goods of Switzerland, southern Germany, and part of Austria. The city itself is only about half the size of Milan. Like an amphitheater, it rises from the water in a series of tiers and terraces, on which are many splendid marble palaces. Every American schoolboy knows of Genoa as the birthplace of Columbus, but it took the Genoese nearly 400 years to decide to honor the discoverer of America with a statue which now stands before the railway station. John Cabot, who saw the coast of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia before Columbus set foot on continental America, was also born in Genoa. End of chapter 7.